at 8:30. We are meeting in person in the Nauset Room in Town Hall in a hybrid format with remote participation and are live streamed on Channel 1072. And I will take attendance. Tim?
Here.
Ginny?
Here.
Dick?
Here.
Judith?
Here.
Jerry?
Here.
Tracy here. Ken?
Here.
David?
Here.
We are joined today by John Chenell, our Conservation Agent, and Christina Smith, our Conservation Office Manager, and Meph Runyon, our Liaison to the Select Board. And our first order of business this morning is to review coastal floodplain resilience, have a presentation and discussion. And I will ask folks here to introduce themselves for the record, the folks who are here to present to us today.
Great.
Heather, you want to begin?
Sure. Thank you very much. Glad to be here, everyone. I'm Heather McElroy. I'm the Natural Resource Manager at the Cape Cod Commission. I'm going to give a little presentation, but invite your comments and questions as we go along. And I'm joined by two colleagues in this effort, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Shannon Hulst. I am floodplain specialist with Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, which is a county agency and also affiliated with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Sea Grant Program.
And good morning, Carol Ridley, Coordinator for the Pleasant Bay Alliance.
Welcome, everybody. And Heather, we'll just, those of us who are in front of the screen probably want to back to either side, and we'll let you get going.
All right. Great. Easy enough. Okay. So I'm hoping that some of you were able to review the recording of the workshop that we had at the end of January. As a brief overview, we are Cape Cod Commission together with the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension and Hui Sea Grant and the Pleasant Bay Alliance are working with the Pleasant Bay towns to help adopt coastal resiliency regulations that would address development activities in the coastal floodplain. And we sort of kicked that work off at the end of January with a workshop where we gave sort of a high-level overview of what these regulations broadly are about and introduced ourselves. Here's the project team, and this work is made possible through funding from the SNEP network, which is actually a grant-funded program, 5-year program, made possible through the SNEP program, so it's very confusing. The SNEP program is EPA funded. They make grants available for projects throughout the southern New England coastal watershed areas, and the SNEP network provides technical assistance to communities within that area. So just as sort of a starting point, this is a snapshot of part of the town of Orleans, highlighting areas that are vulnerable to flooding. This image also shows projected flooding. Not going to get too much into the details of that, but suffice to say that the communities around Pleasant Bay and throughout the Cape are significantly vulnerable to flooding. All those little dots indicate structures that could be vulnerable to flooding during a storm event. So what we're going to do today is just sort of talk through these regulations. There are 3 tools that we developed through some prior grant-funded work: a coastal resiliency bylaw, coastal resiliency regulations, and a zoning bylaw that are designed to all work together. We're just going to talk about the coastal resiliency regulations, which are the purview of the Conservation Commission. And this is, I guess I should also just back up and say that the presentation of these regulations to you and to the other towns, we've been in Harwich and Chatham over the last couple of weeks having similar conversations. This is what we imagine being the first of a couple of conversations. We want to introduce this this document to you. I'm going to step through, actually the slides are screenshots of the document itself. So hopefully you can sort of follow along. I'm going to highlight those elements that are sort of decision points or things that you should be thinking about or aware of in the bylaw. But we're not anticipating any decisions being made today. This is just sort of an introduction and an opportunity for us to have a back and forth. Interrupt me as we go along, and I or others will be able to hopefully answer those questions. And then we'll leave you with this document and thoughts to work through on your own, and then we'll be back to help answer additional questions or help you modify this document. And that's part of what I'll talk about as we go through this. So with that, so these regulations are, they rely on the fact that the town has already some authority within your wetlands bylaw to regulate activity in the floodplain, and that is the case. The wetlands bylaw that is a companion piece to this is something that you could also adopt that would give you additional jurisdiction to regulate areas in a future floodplain. For the moment, what we're recommending you consider is the adoption of these regulations that apply just to the current floodplain as defined by FEMA. And I think most people are familiar with the FEMA floodplain, but if not, we'll get into it or stop and ask questions. So these regulations have these sort of main sections. There's a preamble and purpose, jurisdiction, definitions, presumptions, and then the standards that apply to generally and then to the different subzones within that FEMA floodplain. So we'll start off with the preamble. It's important for a community when adopting regulations to sort of set out why you're doing this, and the importance here of wetlands. And you likely know this, but this is an important part of this document, that they not only support biodiversity, recreation, scenic beauty within the town, the resources that you intend to regulate here also serve as natural protections against flood damage by slowing the velocity of waves and storm surge, et cetera. So this sort of sets out why you might adopt these regulations. And then the purpose. The purpose here is to make sure that we're protecting the wetland resources by controlling activities that might have a significant impact on those resources. So development activities, and those are defined in the document. So sort of a pause here on the jurisdiction. I alluded to this a moment ago. These regulations are going to apply to what you are probably familiar with, the term land subject to coastal storm flowage. This is equivalent, this is the DEP terminology, the Department of Environmental Protection's terminology for an area that's basically equivalent to the FEMA floodplain. We are adding another sort of equivalent definition here called the coastal resilience zone. And the reason that we're introducing this terminology here is that it will enable, by incorporating that throughout this document, it will enable you at a future point, if you wish, to adopt that wetlands bylaw, which would give you jurisdiction into a larger floodplain area, the future floodplain. Again, that's not something we're asking you to consider right at this time, but it's just an explanation why we're introducing this new term and what is it. So we'll stop on the definition of coastal resilience zone in a minute as well. So the definitions, there we define the terms that are important for this regulation. You may already have many of these definitions defined within your existing regulations or bylaw. Depending on, how your community likes to organize its regulations, you could either have them defined here or defined somewhere else, but they need to be defined and they need to be consistent across those regulations. So that's just, sort of a housekeeping piece to make sure that things are consistent. And I'll also note here, you probably, I know you were forwarded the regulations and the presentation in advance of this meeting. If you had an opportunity to review it, you've noticed there are these gray boxes with a comment. The gray boxes and the comments are meant to sort of highlight either the importance of a certain section or considerations or decision points that the community might need to make as you adopt these. Ultimately, those gray boxes in the regulation you adopt are eliminated. So here we are continuing through the definitions, and this is the definition of coastal resilience zone. And here it's laying out that this area is any land subject, A, any land subject to coastal storm flowage, B, any land which is subject to inundation caused by the 1% annual chance coastal storm and sea level rise, and C, the buffer zone of any other coastal wetland resource area located in whole or in part within those areas. So the CRZ, the coastal resilience zone, shall include one or more of the following subareas: the velocity zone, the A zone, which is comprised of two subareas, the moderate wave action area and the minimal wave action zone. And I'll point those out in a minute. Again, just highlighting here, there are a couple of definitions pertaining to how high you are going to require structures to be elevated above flood levels. And this is, again, a decision point for the community, whether you want to be consistent essentially with the requirements of the building code, which has recently been updated and does provide some requirements of significant elevation above flood levels, or if you want to go beyond that. We're suggesting for the moment, let's not get into that because that could be a little bit complicated, but we're here available to discuss if you're interested in getting into that. A couple of other definitions just to bring to your attention and are important for you to sort of consider the implications of are substantial damage and substantial improvement. These are terms that are really consistent with considerations that the building department is need to going to make when they are permitting a request for reconstruction. And part of the definition we're recommending relying on the assessed value of that structure. It is often typical for that definition to rely on market value or an appraised value. We've found, and Shannon has a bit more experience with this, but that those appraised values can create inequities across the community, depending on how people, it's an expense to get an appraisal. So, some people may benefit from that in ways that others may not. So in order to sort of even the playing field, we're recommending that assessed value may be a more equitable approach to that. However, another consideration is that assessed values are typically lower than appraised values. So something for you all to discuss. Yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Doesn't the state building code let the building inspector use both appraised or assessed And the building inspector makes the final decision on this, doesn't he?
So, this all comes from the National Flood Insurance Program regulations, and the local community is allowed to choose whichever approach, but it is ideally supposed to be consistent. The way we've done it and what our state building code allows is, we can use whatever the applicant prefers. So if the applicant prefers to get an appraisal done, then they can get that appraisal done. And as Heather was mentioning, typically it's the folks who have the means to get the appraisal, and then they are able to increase the value of their home with that appraisal, which means they don't have to come up to floodplain standards. So it ends up being a really inequitable way of doing it. But yes, so the building commissioner does have the ability to do that. So this absolutely would need to be coordinated, and same thing with the elevation piece that Heather mentioned, has to be coordinated with the building department. It's not something that the Conservation Commission should do without consulting the building department.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, so then moving on to presumptions. Essentially putting out, you may have this in other regulations, that any project that involves filling, dredging, constructing one or more buildings or other structures within the coastal resilience zone is presumed to have a significant effect on the wetland functions within that area. So that's the presumption, and then it's on the applicant to demonstrate otherwise, or to comply with the standards that are laid out here. So there are some general performance standards that basically lay out the expectations for how building and the treatment of a property within the jurisdictional area will be treated. That applies throughout the floodplain area that is being regulated throughout the CRZ. However, we want to get into the specific subzones where the performance standards are more specific and apply directly to the activities within those subzones. So perhaps some of you are familiar with this graphic developed by the state at some point in the past, and we found it to be very helpful illustration of the flood zone. The FEMA flood zone is effectively from left to right to that vertical line that cuts all the way through the image, not including the X zone. X zone is landward of the 100-year flood, 500-year flood zone. So what we're looking at here is, first of all, the V zone. That's the area most seaward, which is the high hazard area where wave heights could be more than 3 feet, and flood levels are highest. So it's a high hazard area and is regulated with that in mind. Then there are 2 subzones within the A zone. There's the coastal A zone, where wave heights are between 3 feet and 1.5 feet. Again, there is some erosive effect there and hazard and elevated flood levels. And you're going to want to make sure that structures are resilient in that area as well. And then there's the A zone. Oh, and I should say the coastal A zone is also known as the moderate wave action area, the MOA. That's a sort of a newish term that's being introduced by DEP. And then there's the A zone, or the minimal wave action area, the MIWA. And that's where wave heights are less than 1.5 feet. It's more inundation type flooding. Still, you don't want to be flooded, but it's less erosive on the structures and the landscape. So then, yes.
Could you go back to that last picture?
Yep.
So in the definitions, any coastal flood zone that occurs, or the definition for these coastal resiliency regulations includes these areas, but also the buffer zones. For instance, if you had a top of a coastal bank, it includes the buffer zone, but I don't see how the regulations per se should impact activities in the buffer zone, like fill and things like that. They should be more specifically addressing work within these flood zones. Is that not true? I'm hesitant to just include, if you have a top of a coastal bank and you have a 100-foot buffer that is falling under the coastal resiliency definition, that the
buffer is also
buffer
incorporated.
is incorporated and therefore subject to stricter standards it shouldn't be subject to.
No, I think the intent there, Shannon, feel free to disagree with me, but I believe that the intent is to capture buffer zones to wetlands that are the resource areas that are within this greater coastal resilience zone. So if you imagine the flood.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
okay,
I'm
but
just-
not outside of it.
I'm talking about applying the standards or the regulations for the coastal resiliency zone in an upland area. I think there has,
The intention is that we're not applying a buffer zone to the floodplain. So there
Right.
is no
but
buffer.
you're including it in
those.
the coastal resiliency zone.
Right, and that's actually a great point, that maybe we need to revisit that definition. As Heather said, the intention is for marsh areas that have the ability to migrate. So the intention is to protect
sense.
those, yeah, but that is not very
Marsh
clear.
is in an upland area.
But you are regulating an upland area overall here. I mean, it's land subject to coastal storm flowage it is upland.
I feel Madam Chair, when I read it, I feel like it wasn't going beyond the limit of the floodplain currently.
Right.
But it was more so, almost redundant, if needed, to capture those areas that were within it that might fall with only in a buffer to top a bank, for example, if there's some weird topo going on
Right.
around the bay.
I'm in agreement, but I think it needs to be clearer.
Okay, we can work on that. I think that's,
This is next level comment too, by the way. This is first sharing, but that's a good comment. I saw it too in there.
Yep.
I wasn't gonna bring it up today. Like, that's where you're asking us with the gray boxes to either look at it and make more detailed comments as a community.
right.
Yeah, it's a weird
And we'll get there.
interaction between resource area and buffer zone, and it's a weird interaction.
Yeah, okay, that's,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's also because the CRZ, that definition ties to the bylaw, which we are not covering right now, so it is kind of bound to create some confusion. So, yeah, we can
Exactly.
take a look at that.
When I read it, I fell back on your jurisdiction statement. We have no CRZ in our bylaw enabling us no regulations in an area in the community for CRZ.
Right.
We do have land subject to coastal storm flowage. And the jurisdiction statement was nice and simple, it was a sentence. And so it's only, the way it's drafted, it's only to land subject to coastal storm flowage. So in an event a buffer zone would reach beyond that, we don't have the jurisdiction to reach beyond that with that resource area that these regs would apply to. And that's just the next level comment that we gotta work out.
But you may not always be in the room to explain that to
Well,
people.
we work it out, and this is where we comment for our drafters
Yep.
to add color where we might be more clear for the community.
absolutely.
And we'll do that.
Yeah, no, that's a,
Dave just jumped in.
no, that's good.
That's great.
No, I wasn't supposed to.
Well, there's no,
No, I think that's great.
There are no real boundaries here. I mean, there are boundaries.
jurisdiction.
Don't ever say
statement is the real boundary in our world on Tuesday morning.
I was wrong choice of words on my part. You know what I mean.
I mean,
This is a
feel free to ask
discussion.
questions.
It's free flowing. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, so getting into some of the specifics of the performance standards for these different subzones. This is where sort of the rubber meets the road, and where we have this model regulation that we've presented to Pleasant Bay towns we're recommending these, but ultimately it's up to you as a community to decide, how stringent you want to be as you consider adoption of these. So within the V zone, again, this very high hazard area, there's no new construction or expansion of any building or other structure, including sheds, garages, pools, septic systems, or other structures. And then jumping down to the next highlight, also no new construction or expansion of roads, parking lots, public shared use paths, or other impervious surfaces. Although, then jumping down to the last highlight, it does allow for the maintenance and repair of existing roads and parking lots, and conversion of at-grade roads to elevated roadways or bridges. So really trying to limit any new construction. Think about, you've got there are plenty across Cape Cod of existing structures in the V zone. We're not trying to have people actively remove them, but as these structures come up for renovations, or they are substantially damaged and need to be repaired, make sure that we're not worsening the level of activity within the V zone. We're managing it or ultimately pulling back. But the pulling back is another conversation. These regulations don't get to that piece, just to be clear. And then just so I'm not going through the long list of screenshot after screenshot, some other things that the V zone prohibits are new berms or seawalls, again, new berms or seawalls, new septic, new impervious patios, no hazardous materials should be stored within the V zone. And then there are provisions to allow for substantial damage or improvement, as I just sort of noted. And there are some provisions to allow for the placement of fill. Then moving to the A zone, also known as the moderate wave action area. So that's sort of that intermediate area of flood inundation with wave heights below 3 feet, but more than 1.5 feet. These regulations for this section are a little less stringent than the V zone, but the comment here highlighted, the point is there's still a lot of hazard there, and we would recommend or suggest that you could adopt the regulations for the V zone for the MOA as well, or elements of them. You want to chime in, Shannon?
Yeah. And part of the reason for doing that is that the building code has just adopted this coastal A zone or the moderate wave action zone, and the building code applies V zone standards in the A zone because of that risk of waves. So that's why it's something to keep in mind to keep that consistent. I also want to note on the V zones, one that was drawn largely from the DEP recommendations that they are working on but have not yet promulgated. And we don't know when they will promulgate them. But also, I believe, Orleans, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but either through conservation or zoning, you have already prohibited new development in just your V zone. Yeah, okay. So that would not be, you might be adding some clarification pieces to that, but you've already got that piece covered.
Great. I hadn't focused on that. That's exciting. Okay, so then another thing to just focus on, I'm highlighting it here in the MOA, but it applies more or less throughout, is how you treat historic structures. Cape Cod has a ton of historic structures. Some of them are on the National Register. Some of them are in historic districts or eligible for listing. This is a defining characteristic of our community. And their placement on a property is also often significant to their listing or their historic value. So this has been developing regulations for this has been a long conversation between the Cape Cod Commission's historic preservation specialist and Shannon, who's the county's floodplain specialist. Is how do we sort of navigate this in a way? Because we want, ultimately, the purpose here is as we as communities are regulating development within this floodplain, we want to make our community more resilient. And that applies to historic structures as well. So here, there is a provision that historic structure shall not be required to be elevated if the structure complies with the flooding, if you have a floodplain zoning bylaw, if it complies with that bylaw, and that the alteration will preclude the structure's continued designation as a historic structure. So I think that's just something we want you to sort of think through, that whole provision.
And we can, it refers to a floodplain zoning bylaw. You have a floodplain zoning bylaw, but right now it does not address historic structures. And so what we would ideally like to see is, in the future, the coastal resilience zoning bylaw to be adopted as well. And so that does address historic structures. And what that is it's helping the building commissioner clarify what's in the building code in relation to historic structures. And as Heather said, the commission and the extension have been working on this for years in towns all over the Cape, that we have a lot of historic structures, and we want to make sure that they are protected. So this is another piece that absolutely needs to be coordinated with the building department, and that reference to the floodplain zoning bylaw is right now a reference to nothing. But the theory is that if your planning board does want to adopt the zoning bylaw in the future, then it would be referring to that zoning bylaw. If not, then that's something we should talk more about as you get further into the process.
So then the last subzone that I'm going to cover here is the MIWA, the minimal wave action area. So again, that's sort of the most landward and where structures are vulnerable to inundation, but not necessarily erosive actions. And commensurate with that, these standards are the least restrictive of the three subzones within the floodplain. But, still, the project will not redirect, channelize, or exacerbate flood conditions, and that structures need to be elevated consistent with the building code. And I think that's where we can stop and sort of discuss more generally. I have one more slide that are sort of a sum up of things for you to consider as you sort of workshop this, but we're happy to stay and answer any additional questions you have or get into some discussion as you like.
Guys, questions, comments? Everyone's very quiet this morning.
No, as Shannon said, I was going to bring up the fact that the state building code did just change, and that's important. It fits right in with what you're proposing here. In some towns, I think Chatham has, in their own regulations, they added an additional foot to what the state requires.
I'm not familiar with that, actually, but the elevation piece would be a great thing to discuss. We have maps that we would like to show you about the difference between the sea level rise modeling that we're using compared to the building code elevation. In some places, it's very similar. In some places, it's pretty different. No matter, in some places, the sea level rise modeling does recommend that you elevate lower than the building code. We cannot do that. So it would have to be a minimum of what the building code requires. But that is, we're happy to come back and have that discussion, but that is, it takes some time to wrap your mind around.
So is your sea level rise modeling, is that available online to see?
Yes,
Okay.
so, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have developed a web page on the Pleasant Bay Alliance website that's devoted to this project. So we have, we're assembling links to these presentations, the regulations, as well as some of those resources, the floodplain viewers and so forth. So it's kind of a one-stop place to.
So does it include all of Orleans or just Pleasant Bay?
All of Orleans.
Okay, great.
The whole Cape, actually,
Yeah.
it covers, so.
So that's looking back at the commission's floodplain and the McFerm
Yeah, exactly.
years.
Yep.
So it's using state data as a state model that was procured by the state, and then they have it statewide, and then we've adapted it for the Cape. We had to work a little bit with the consulting firm that put it together to make sure that it was appropriate for the way that we're using it. So we have it for the whole Cape. It's on the Cape Cod Commission's Coastal Resiliency Tools page. I think that's what it's called. And it's
Easier to go to the Pleasant Bay
yes, right.
webpage.
It's the floodplain data toolkit, I think.
Right, so it just under programs, coastal resiliency regulations, and I can just send John a link and circulate.
If you wouldn't mind, that'd be great, Carol.
There are lots of different layers to turn on and off and 3 different views,
Screen-
so.
Heather had a screen grab of it to begin.
Right, yep,
Up there.
yep.
Yes,
Yep,
that's
very
right. That's where we started with the,
But if I could,
Yeah.
Drusy, and I think like next level, if you go there, I had a couple questions, but if you go to the next level, and it's really trying to really focus in on landslide to coastal storm flowage, and for commissioners to understand these new subzones. And I don't know, I assume the LIMWA was on there, the acronym you didn't mention, which is the line between the two, within the floodplain. Yikes. And the velocity zone has always been a established line on the floodplain maps. So you can look through an area within the floodplain and work your way through the velocity zone, where they have proposed a number of new performance standards that could apply if the community were to adopt them. And then as you move landward through the 2 subzones that Heather went over today, and again, looking back on what's proposed. Understanding all that, you're gonna have a number of questions. The performance standards are very detailed, and there's probably a lot of questions, community to community, that might come up within that. I think that's would be a homework assignment, really, Drusy, for commissioners, to go to the viewer, take a look at a property. Everyone tends to gravitate towards 1 or 2. And then
Look in your own backyard.
that's what everyone
Yeah.
does. And then you can open up these and see what might apply to what area. And I think that's your Tuesday morning business. The only other question I have for the team while you guys are here is like, are you going around to planning boards? Because at the end, you mentioned, and where the V-zone new construction prohibition lies in Orleans is in 164, that's zoning. So is there a need to maybe continue to communicate with our planning board and see if there's a suite of new things that they might be considering bringing to the town meeting? And because that seems like an opportunity for us to at least coordinate with them as some of this stuff becomes state-of-the-art and we move
We
forward.
do have, George Meserve is involved in these discussions. He was at the planning summit we had in January, so that we've started along that path. But
And are you
yeah.
making similar rounds to them with the zoning piece of it?
Not yet, because the regulations, you all can adopt these regulations within the land subject to coastal storm flowage now.
they have to go to town
Oh, you
meeting.
have to go to town
Our
meeting.
regs go
Oh,
to town
you have to
meeting
go to town
for
meeting anyway,
transparency,
right.
But we can promulgate them and bring them to the
Yep.
meeting, just like the planning board would a zoning law.
Yep.
They're different votes at the meeting.
Right.
It would be nice to coordinate.
Yeah, so we've been focusing on conservation commissions because in other towns, they can adopt the regulations through the commission, and then the plan is to go for the bylaws. But, right, we've tried to have everyone involved in that kickoff meeting that we had in January, and we communicate with other folks as well. But it'd be great also if you can connect with them so that they're hearing it from all sides. Yeah. And then we are happy to come and do the same thing. for them.
Just to put a finer point on that, that early slide where I sort of highlighted that we're talking about the regulations, we also developed this bylaw, wetlands bylaw, and the zoning bylaw with higher standards. They are all designed to work together. So ultimately, we are encouraging communities to adopt both wetlands regulations and the bylaw, which might extend your jurisdiction, and for the community to adopt zoning, so that as building inspectors, planning board, zoning boards of appeal are enforcing the zoning, and you all are administering the wetlands regulations, they're working together and there aren't conflicts.
And the general timeline that we've heard discussed at the other meetings in Harwich and Chatham is maybe targeting the 2027 annual town meeting season as the opportunity for adopting both the coastal resilience bylaw and the zoning bylaw.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? Anyone in the public have any questions or comments? Anyone online, Mia?
Nope.
It's a lot to digest.
It is a lot to digest.
Very good, and thank you so much. Very
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today and giving us this overview. It's really important for us to, it's a good launching pad for these discussions for the commission and the town, so. thank
Happy to do it. We're happy to come back when you're ready. I think you all received a copy of the presentation as well. So just the last slide sort of hones in on the, some of the key decision points to focus on, but you're going to want to discuss all of the elements, so. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you,
and
Heather.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Carol Shannon, thank you.
Good day.
Okay, our next order of business, continuations, Robert and Abby Summerskills, 26 Jackknife Point Road, by Shorefront Consulting, map 56, parcel 1. The proposed repairs to an existing and licensed shed and platform. Work will occur on a coastal bank, coastal beach, and within land subject to coastal storm flowage in the Pleasant Bay ACEC. Morning.
Good morning. Happy St. Patrick's Day. So for the record, Mark Burgess of Shorefront Consulting. We're here for the second meeting merely for a plan revision which was submitted a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. There's a letter in the file that you should have that outlines the changes. Some of it was to have the plan just correct some drafting things and make it more consistent and correct flood zones and top of bank and things like that. And I added some notes. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think we addressed all of your concerns from the last hearing.
Okay, commissioners, hands raised, questions, comments? Jerry?
Yeah, I just have, and it wasn't just here, is if the barge is being used, do we need to put a time of year restriction on it?
Yes, so after I left from the last meeting, I did speak with Chris Norjo, and his anticipation is if he uses a barge, it would only be to bring materials out to the float on the dock and bring them into the shore. So that's the only reason he'd use a barge. So any of your conditions for grounding and things like that would certainly apply. And other than that, the project would go exactly like we said. Maybe a little pruning, tripod to drive those posts, and everything else is by hand.
Okay.
So time of year.
I don't think you need it here. There's a permanent pier for them to use to land, and this applicant has chosen a contractor already. The tripod is set up by hand, so
Okay.
I don't think you should anticipate any grounding. I don't think any is planned, where you would normally, or a barge that would need to float a high tide up to the base of a bank on a marsh or something. None of that is
Probably would then want a contractor change clause.
A what?
Point,
Contractor change clause.
yeah.
Basically says the contractor, if changed, has to be.
So if it changes, we have to let you know. Yeah, but yes, the barge would only be used to.
I'm not suggesting that you change the
No. If we do,
clarification.
no, absolutely. If the contractor changes, then yes, we have to at least let you know. Yeah, the barge would only be used to bring in materials, not drive any pilings or anything.
Other questions? John?
That's one for Mark. On your cross-section fibrils, TRM, the acronym, the matting?
Mm-hmm.
TRM? Run that out for me. What is that? Is that Coyer?
Yeah, like a 9,000. It's
Is that a
a
correct trade reference? I've not seen that before.
I have a sample in my office, but it's jute. It's all jute, and in about 1 inch squares. So it's tough. It's not the thin stuff.
It's 900 gram Coyer. I understand what that looks like. I asked the question just to ensure it was 100% biodegradable
Yeah.
materials. And
Yeah, no plastic. You can put that in there, but no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, guys? Okay. Is there any public comment on this project in the room or online, Mia?
Nope.
Okay, can I get a motion to close public comment?
I move to close public comment for 26 Jackknife Point Road.
Second.
All those in favor, Tim?
Aye.
Jenny? Okay.
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Dracy, aye. Ken?
Aye.
And a motion on the project.
I move to approve the project for 26 Jackknife Point Road, referencing project narrative by Shorefront Consulting, dated January 29, 2026. Site plan by Down Cape Engineering, dated 10/16/2025, revised 2/17/2026, with the special condition that a contractor change clause is required.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Tim?
Aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Dracy, aye. Ken?
Aye.
All set. Thank you very much for
you.
addressing our questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, our next order of business, Ezrin and Maureen Hausman, 17 Pilgrim Lake Terrace East by J.C. Ellis Design, map 62, parcel 39. The proposed construction of an interior landing with steps and a screened porch, installation of a new 2-compartment septic tank, and construction of 2 new parking areas within the 100-foot buffer zone to the top of a coastal bank.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, Jason Ellis representing Lake House LLC. We eliminated some of the parking area that was proposed on the southeast corner of the driveway. We eliminated that entirely, and then the other parking space we cut in half, so it would just be provided 1 parking space. And then we have provided a total mitigation area of 1,226 square feet in 3 different areas on the property. I also had the builder put together a bunch of information regarding the volume of the construction and the pitch of the roof and that kind of thing, and also a floor plan. So, and which I also believe that you're probably getting John's probably getting a lot of information on, but we have 3 trees that fell down in the storm that they also want to get cut up. One is right next to the garage. I don't know how it missed the garage, but it's it's right there. And then there was 2 closer that block the path down to the pond, and they just want to remove those. There are some plants that are in the area of where the screened-in porch is proposed and also where the parking space is proposed. There's a couple of azalea bushes and several non-native plants, some forsythias and some pussy willow and some other plants in there. Proposing to just transplant those to the area just to the west of the garden in that bubble area. So those plants would all be relocated to that area. Driveway, again, would be pervious, just gravel to match the existing driveway. And then I've also added 2 more additional dry wells to catch the runoff off the garage. So that's pretty much it. Do you have any other questions?
The trees that were lost during the storm, I don't suppose any of them were the trees that needed to be removed for the...
No. Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only vegetation that's really going to be removed is there's 2 azaleas that are right up on the west side of the garage.
Okay.
They're right up tight. They're going to relocate those onto the west side of the garden. And then there's several plants. Some of them I couldn't identify. I think there were some more. They're all pretty much non-native plants that were planted in there, and they're just going to relocate those out of there. So there's no trees that are coming down or anything like that, so.
Okay, I was misremembering. I thought there was a tree that needed to come down. Okay. Commissioners, other questions? Ken?
Jason, thanks for the update. Just a couple minor points primarily for my own edification, but on page 1 of your narrative, you have under item 3, the septic tank installation. You identify that the tank will either be removed and replaced with clean compacted sand or pumped and filled. What is the decision terminate for that, just out of curiosity?
I mean, the septic tank's an H20 tank, the one that's there. So if we pull that tank out and remove it, it's just going to create more disturbance if we do that. Sometimes it's easier just to pump it out and fill it and then leave it in place. They'd compact the sand inside of it.
Right.
If for some reason it needs to come out just for space, I mean, we can, by septic system regulations, we can do it either way.
Okay.
But it just would create less disturbance if we can just leave it there and pump it and fill it. So that's what we'd ideally like to do, so.
Okay, you have them, you still have both provisions, and that's what I was curious about, as to what's the catalyst for going one way or the other?
It would be whatever the contractor decides. If the contractor gets in there and decides that it's, for some reason, he can't put the tank where I want it and has to shift it a little bit, maybe into where the old tank is or something like that, then we'd have to pull the old tank and get it out of there, but.
Got it.
But-
And then in Vernhart's notes,
Yep.
he uses this term sister framed. Will you illuminate me as to that means?
Can you repeat that again?
Sister framed, under existing gable walls will sister framed?
It basically means that the framing is sistered up against the existing framing. So basically,
Oh.
if the structural piece, like the rafter, for example, is only a 2x6, they'd sister a 2x10 up next to it,
Got it.
kind of double it up, so.
That's required by the building code, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No problem.
Anybody else? Questions?
And
Judith?
on the record, thanks for your volume calculations.
Yes, so forgive me, because it's been a while since I've been here. So I think initially there were going to be 2 parking areas on either side of the lot. So looking at this newest plan now, is there just the one?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And so that therefore is fewer trees being removed as well.
Yeah, and actually, when I went back and looked at it, even on the little part that I eliminated on the southeast corner of the driveway, I think there was just a couple of branches off of a white pine that would need to come down.
Okay,
There wasn't even like a full tree that needed to come down, so.
okay.
But we eliminated that anyhow, so
Okay,
they were
again,
fine
thank
with
you.
that, so, yeah.
Anything else, guys? John?
Mitigation's nice, thank you for that. 5 trees and a bunch of native shrubs. You're still showing the ACC incorrect, and so I'm not gonna hold you up for that, but I think we should make a note. When you get into the pond and 10 is below the edge of wetland, it's wetland plus 100 per the boundary description, so
Edge of wetland from?
the ACC, when you get into these freshwater ponds, Pilgrim and Crystal,
Okay.
where elevation creeps, where the wetlands are elevated above 10.
Yep.
The rule is wetland plus 100 is the ACC.
Okay.
So it should follow your wetland line, but your wetland line's on the plan, so
Okay.
I was able to determine your project doesn't affect the ACC.
Okay.
It's just a plan thing. We can make that note. We don't have to,
Okay.
Good catch.
Good to know.
I'm in the weeds over here.
Should,
But the mitigation was nice, and
my happy place, that
I
should have
think the
spotted
tree
that.
removal falls away with the elimination of the parking area to the right of the garage, to the right of the existing drive, which was nice. We did make an on-site, we beat your staking, but we saw,
Okay.
that area was the treed area, so that coming off, and then the 5 trees going in is mitigation. Nice.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any public comment? Online, Mia?
Nope.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Dick.
Do we need to, or should we give permission to remove those 3 downed trees? Since
It's
they're-
in the current narrative.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
In the newest division here.
Yeah, I added that in the narrative, so.
I was kind of moving, so, yes, I get it. We vote yes today, you can do it tomorrow, and that's okay.
okay. Can I get a motion to close the public
I
hearing?
move to close the public hearing for 17 Pilgrim Lake Terrace East.
Second.
All those in favor, Tim?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Brucey, aye. Ken?
Aye.
And a motion on the project.
I move to approve the project for 17 Pilgrim Lake Terrace East, referencing project narrative by J.C. Ellis Design, dated January 13th, 2026, revised March 8th, 2026, and a septic system modification plan by J.C. Ellis Design, dated January 11, 2026, revised March 8th, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor? Tim?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Brucey, aye. Ken?
Aye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next order of business, administrative review. Pablo Parada Pens and Courtney Ponyan, 82 Lake Drive, the proposed repairs to an existing pool.
Pablo's here today. He's got, I think he can introduce his project.
Yes, hi, good
Welcome.
morning. Thank you. Yeah, so we have.
Sorry, just for the record,
yep.
could you introduce yourself on? Yeah.
Apologies. Pablo Parada Pence, 82 Lake Drive.
Thank you.
The application submitted is to repair an existing pool. The pool is aged and has some significant deferred maintenance. It's leaking. In order to undertake the repairs, we just need to replace the decking around it, which is at the moment is concrete, and the coping as well, to replace the plumbing lines. Our intention is to just replace the materials that are there with like-for-like materials or better. We're going to replace the concrete with natural stone, i.e. travertine, or it's going to be travertine, possibly limestone. And there's also significant sort of square footage that is at the moment cemented brick, which we were going to replace with permeable base. And where there's no travertine, we were going to do 3/4 inch native stone. The project is to remain entirely inside the 100-foot buffer zone. Inside the existing footprint, and there's a small section that is actually inside the 100-foot buffer zone. So I sent via email a copy of the survey that was done a few years ago, and it actually shows the section that is actually inside that 100-foot buffer zone. It's just a corner of the pool and patio area. So the intention is to bring whatever equipment is needed to undertake these repairs through the roadside. There's a fence there which we were going to remove and enter through there. We're not going to come in through the conservation area. The only thing not mentioned in my proposal was that we're at the moment leaning towards using Imperial Landscaping and shoreline pools to undertake the repairs. So that's basically it.
And,
Go ahead, John.
so I think given that this is hardscape work, a lot of it is, as Pablo described, outside the jurisdiction. But the part that is within is grade retained, and so it's a little sensitive, so we just thought the best way just to fully disclose what was being asked to the commission today, see if you would approve it. I think he has heard my challenge as like-for-like type thing. We do have a good survey for the property from a project a couple of years ago, and so we're good there. You have good wetland edges. My concern was, hey, it's grade retained and dumps off pretty quick to Twinings beyond that. But given that the access is wide open and a lot of it's outside, it's very approachable as he has described. I don't know if you have any questions for me or if anyone's had a chance to look at what Pablo put together that was in your online packet. Pictures, the description, and.
So, Pablo, the work will be accessed from the street side as opposed to the pond side?
Correct. In other words, there's a fence street side, which is going to remove a couple panels and anything. And it's actually easier that way anyway because it's flat. Whereas, as John pointed out, it does slope off pretty rapidly on the backside. We wouldn't want to enter that way.
And this does say that the proposed work will take place in a resource area, but I don't believe that's true. I believe it's the buffer zone.
That's correct.
Okay.
You're going to dig for new piping, is that correct?
Yeah, just along where the pool edge is,
Okay.
where the plumbing lines are, we have to basically go in and remove the old plumbing lines. They're leaking.
And the people doing the work aren't concerned that digging on the retaining wall side might affect that retaining wall?
I've actually asked that specific question, and the answer I got was a categorical no. We specifically asked the question, we're planning on leaving the fence there and the retaining walls remain where they are.
Okay.
It was a concern of mine that if we were to do anything to the pool, should we do the retaining walls first? And the answer I got is you can do them, in whatever order you want. And we chose to do the pool area first because it is actually leaking and it's, it is in need of repair. So that was kind of our first priority.
Okay, because that would be my only concern.
I think that pool's been there at
collapsing.
least 30 years, maybe 40.
Yeah, it's a really
been there
old pool. We
very
actually don't know when it was built because the last known plan that we found was hand-drawn. And it actually, the way it was drawn, it was entirely outside conservation. But yeah, it's an old gunite pool. It's actually, and it's It's salvageable. That's my intent. I love the pool. I want to just save it. I don't really have any intention to replace it. We've had several people come in and say, you should replace the pool, which is kind of senseless in my mind.
John?
And I think Pablo's heard over the years, I think the retaining wall works, probably another permit, depending on how that gets designed when it gets undertaken. But my question is, could you live with a note that allows no work beyond that retaining wall? Can we lean on that retaining wall as a work limit de facto
Yeah.
for your project?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my only concern, is the stability of that wall when you're digging for pipes. Anything else, guys? Ginny?
One question. How do you draw down the pool when you need to empty it?
When we empty it at the moment, well, to be honest, we haven't emptied it. We've only filled it. But,
Because it leaks.
because it leaks, yeah.
Okay.
And so at the moment, it's, and it leaks where the skimmers are, so it leaks at above a certain height. And so whenever it fills up above there, it just goes right back down. And we've always basically brought the pool, when we open it up for the season, the pool person who does it for us basically just tops it off, puts in chemicals. One of the things that we also are keen to do is to convert from the current water system, which is, they use, chlorine tablets, to a saltwater system. So saltwater is much less, the pH is much more, it's less caustic, and it's much more, friendly to everything.
The question stems from my concern about pool water going into Twinings.
At the moment, I can only imagine that some of it does,
Yeah.
but through groundwater, it just goes down and then over, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's
that
good
would
to
stop,
fix it.
and then ongoing, any draw down to the pool that close to a water body, we would ask that it be trucked out and
Yeah.
not just flooded onto the land.
Okay.
Okay.
Larry, you had something?
Are you going to be redoing the shed too?
No,
Okay.
shed remains exactly where it is, as it is. It's in great condition.
Is that where the pool heater is going to go, Pablo? In the
Yes.
shed?
And that's where the old pool heater was. We actually decommissioned it because it was basically a mouse house, but, yeah.
It was a mouse house, eh?
Yes, it was an old boiler that had a pilot, and the mice absolutely loved it.
Yes.
Supporting wildlife.
I think a lot of people found mice in their generators recently. Yeah. Anything else, commissioners? Okay, can I get a motion?
Move to approve the administrative review for 82 Lake Drive.
Did you want to put a note in about the work limit being,
I already have.
okay, all right. Okay.
Then I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, Tim?
Aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Twice.
moving along.
Drusy, aye.
moving
Ken?
along.
Aye.
Wow, okay.
Just moving it along.
Okay, next order of business, just to make
Thank
sure
you.
everyone saw the correspondence, Massachusetts Southern Pine Beetle Management Plan for 2026. Just, we've got a good old southern pine beetle in our midst, so if there are any questions, the only person who could probably answer them are John. 'cause-
Yeah, I mean, I've read about it. It's, new pest. Haven't seen any actual impacts from it just yet, but
They like to eat
pines.
any evergreen?
Surprisingly, they will move into white pine as well. So a couple of your properties likely have kind of these stands. They call out two specific stands, communities. We have one of those here on many properties. But we'll see how they do, and there's a lot of recommendations that are more towards forestry-type activities that we don't typically do in the woods to provide resiliency to the stands, but you should read it. I think I'm seeing a ton of correspondence regarding the pest. I didn't know if the commissioners were, so I thought it's just a good time to circulate this to make you aware of it, and I'm sure you'll see more of it as it becomes more present in the
So
woods.
I know most tree guys now with the turpentine beetle recommend against chipping and putting pine chips back down on the property. they just sort of recommend taking that material out. I don't know that it really matters, but I would assume this would be the same.
Not really. They go over cut and remove, they go over cut and lay down, they go over the
Okay.
tactics in this literature. They don't recommend one over the other. I also think it's new and they're learning as you read. but-
Okay, so this is good. I will review this. Thank you.
If we're on an onsite, can you show us?
And that's what I would like to do is maybe start looking for more pitch tubes and if there's a chance, if we somehow, if the people tracking the insect find it here too, partake in some monitoring and some trapping and just, see how it goes. I mean, John Kenrick's property that jumps out at me is a significant white pine community that's actually regenerating as white pine. There's pitch pine in there too, so that's a lot of pine on a big piece of woods in town. There's other more stressed pine stands that we have, like on Pawa, that has a white pine understory, but
See, we need pileated woodpeckers. I was just up north and
Yes, we do.
watched one of those guys working, and oh my God. It's almost frightening.
We have a couple on Cross Road, thank goodness, they go to
You get
town.
pileated?
Oh, yeah.
You're kidding.
No, but
Ginny?
as far as I've been
John,
told.
is that something we should be
low.
concerned about in the watershed?
I think it's something you should be concerned about if you're on a board or committee that's ever considering kind of a forest-type management
Well,
plan.
that would be the watershed.
Exactly, 500 acres, oak pine woodlands.
Okay.
So I think you'd be concerned too, it's like everything, if we have stand die-off and then you have fuel loads, and it's just kind of starts to, one way or another, will lead to some management reactions, probably by boards or committees and maybe us at some point.
Thank you.
Okay, next order of business, administrator's business. John, you wanted to give us an
I
update?
just wanted to run, I sent some few updates over our little break that we had, but just so the commissioners know, on March 4th, Drusy and I attended the select board meeting to support the request for our annual town meeting warrant article to fund the conservation fund at $125,000. And we were supported there by the board. And so I believe that article is going forward. It's in the warrant. We answered a few questions. Thanks, Drusy, for attending and backing me up. But it was great support by the select board, and I think, for Kim's usual, I'll be in the front of the meeting there, ready to answer any questions, I guess.
Right where he likes to sit.
Yeah.
Please vote yes.
So,
Orleans.
but anyways, it gave us a chance to describe a little bit about the department funding, the conservation fund, and how we take on projects, and I think it was all very well received. Of course, it has been over the years now, and I think it's just, it's obviously well supported, so I think there is an effort to support us and see us continue in that role, so it's great. And then, I think I let you know that on March 5th, we received our final design for the barn plans from Classic Architectural Works, and a big thank you to Rich Morangel of Orleans, who did those for us.
Putnam Barn, to be.
Sorry, yes, I'm just far into it, yes, for the Putnam Agricultural Barn Project. Rich gave us legitimate plans based on the concept that we were able to secure the grant with, and plans from a licensed design professional that we immediately used in 2 other meetings that week. So on that same night, I went to Old Kings Highway and secured our approval for the structure. I messed up my application, so I have to go back for the solar panels, and I'm back to Old Kings Highway, I think, on the 2nd of April. That was my fault. But they were, it was just that was my good first chance to then share. I think that night I was sharing the design almost before you guys saw it, because it was right on my desk, with some local experts. They're all local committee members, so it was good just to share it then, and they supported it and approved it that night. And then the following day with that, I was able to secure our building permit for the barn project right here in Town Hall. And so on the 4/2, April 2nd, I'm back at Old Kings Highway for the solar panel, which I think should be supported. And I think I let you know that, now, we're working on now securing contractors for individual contracts, and that's ongoing. The site, Ryder Wilcox is staking the site this week, maybe even, I think even today. And that's gonna be a rough stake to prepare for some site work. And if you haven't been there on a walk, or if you've talked to someone that has been there on the walk, we cordoned off that portion of the parking lot that we intend to work in with barricades and cones. So now that the snow is melting, we'll try to get going on that. So that's kind of what I had on the Putnam Agricultural Barn. And then I think for my wrap-up on admin's business, we do have an appointment back at the Select Board on 3/25, and Drusy and I will attend. We have a memo in that should be part of the Select Board's packet on Kent's Point. Our actions, a lot of our work, and then our change to the land management plan, and then a request for them to support our changed land management plan and back up our seasonal parking sticker requirement. When you see the memo as part of the packet, we included in it that the department has already contacted the police chief, and they are able to support this. And so in the memo, using the Select Board's new format, we're actually recommending they be the implementing arm of your new land management plan and parking sticker recommendation. And we will present that all on the 25th.
Yeah, so just for the public, again, March 25th, the Conservation Commission will be giving recommendation to the Select Board vis-à-vis seasonal parking at Kent's Point. So if you have any input, please attend that meeting. Judith?
Yeah, so, John, I started to do a walk through Kenrick Woods following the storm to identify work that needed to be done. Frankly, I couldn't get more than probably 20, 25 feet in between the snow and the downed trees. I couldn't even find the path. So I started to send you a note and then thought, this is ill-timed. DPW is just, I'm sure, overwhelmed with the amount of cleanup. So I'm just asking when you think it's appropriate that we go back to our properties to make walkthroughs, let us know. But until then, I think they've done such a great job with all of the cleanup all over town. The last thing I would want to do is send a note that now says, okay, these 16 trees need to be removed from the path in John Kenrick Woods.
Well, we've already done that, so
You-
I
you
don't
did
need
walk through.
liaisons to walk. Actually, OCT helped us out. They're mapping them.
Okay.
So we have some maps from Tom and Sam. We've shared those with Andrew, Andrew DeVoe is our parks foreman. And Andrew is also a guy that walks the sites.
Okay,
They are off the roads and into the woods a little bit, not a ton. And then, of
Okay.
course, parks, their other seasonal work is gonna compete with that woods work now.
Right.
So, for those listening, we did open up Hopkins that had a tree across the site drive. That was a priority of ours. And Andrew and the guys were out on Kent's, and they opened up the road last Thursday, I think, to the point and back. I have, I'll grab a couple of you. I have probably going to be on Kent's with some volunteer work here in April to finish up some work. I'll talk about that. Grab one or two of you out to the meeting today. But John Kenrick is a mess, as is Pawa, and they know about all this stuff.
okay.
I think as long as while we're talking about it, it's a lot of the deadwood is likely to remain. We'll bust open trails. I think you're going to see kind of an approach that does it that way. And the fuel loads we'll live with, and a lot of that is green wood, not dry yet. I'm not totally worried about it for a fire hazard in the immediate season, but if we don't chase it out, or at least chase it down to the ground by next season, it might be an issue for management. So we'll probably be talking about, in September, when we get back out on properties, you're still gonna see a ton of that. And
Okay.
so.
Yeah, the downwood is fine, just opening up the paths, I think. And-
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. you know, 'cause
Yeah, well,
Everyone's got tree work going on. Okay.
Juicy, could I make
Yeah, go ahead.
3 quick announcements? Tomorrow, the 18th, Board of Water and Sewer is going to establish level 2 drought restrictions, watering restrictions, starting in May 1. They will be very similar to last year's, but we're going to do a better job of articulating them. But basically, don't bother turning on your sprinkler systems. You won't be allowed to use them. And that's for private well users as well as public. Second, tomorrow, we are going to certify substantial completion of Phase 2.
Congratulations.
Yes, yes. Hopefully, the Board of Health will issue the order to connect the next day, and likely the letters will go out in about a week. And the other exciting news is that bids are now open for Phase 3, and they close on the 22nd of April.
Great, thank you. Thank you to that committee for all the work you do. It's a massive
I've
undertaking.
been digging for months. There with my shovel and hard hat.
Driving excavators.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Okay, next order business, chairman's business, review and vote on letter of support for Rock Harbor sediment reuse. There was a letter included in your packet. Just to support the work going on over there at Rock Harbor. I don't know if you want to say anything more about it, John?
I just encourage you to support the joint grant effort coming out of Natural Resources in Orleans. And, specifically, those of you that have been part of past dredge projects, mouth of the harbor, that sediment, usually through core sample, tests out as suitable for beach nourishment. And so, not the entire harbor per se, but it's usually the sand that's at the mouth of the harbor. I encourage they look at it and find out a way to keep it and reuse it. If you vote to authorize the chair to sign the letter, this will go over to them today. They're on this immediately.
Any questions?
This isn't the last time, I mean, this has gone on for quite some time, and I can remember 2004, we were doing it there, and it actually nourished 4 beaches up Cape Cod Bay area on the Eastham side. It's been a project for, Henry Lynn started it, I think.
Ongoing.
Ongoing.
Mother Nature keeps feeding us. Okay, can I get a motion?
Move to approve the letter of support for Rock Harbor sediment reuse.
Second.
All those in favor, Tim?
Aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Brucey? Aye. Ken?
Aye.
Okay, next order of business, approve the meeting minutes for 2/17/26. Did anyone have any comments or questions? If not, can I get a motion?
Move to approve the meeting minutes for February 17, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor, Tim?
Aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Dick, aye.
Judith, aye.
Judith? Jerry?
Aye.
Brucey? Aye. Ken?
Aye.
And a motion on the meeting minutes for 3/3/26.
Move to approve the meeting minutes for March 3rd, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor, Tim?
Aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Dick?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Brucey? Aye. Ken?
Aye.
And is there any general public comment? There's no one in the room, anyone online? I don't see anyone. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.